Thank you for attending tonight and coming in on this beautiful evening and getting to hear about virtual companies. It is an intimate group tonight, so we'll make the best of it, and I hope you're writing down questions as our panelists speak. So I'm going to go through, my name's Phil Sear, I'm the Vice Chair of the Venture Forum, filling in for Joe Vignali tonight, who's at a function in Boston. And so what I will do is go through some brief bios of all of our presenters in the beginning here so that I don't have to keep interrupting, and then we'll ask them to come up, talk to us for a few minutes. We'll run through all four presenters, and then we'll invite them to come up here and sit in a panel format, and whatever questions you might have developed over the evening, we can get at those. So I'm going to go in order of presentation, and I've decided that ladies are going first. So Yael Schwartz, Dr. Yael Schwartz is a Massachusetts life science executive, mentor, and serial entrepreneur. She received her PhD with honors in human physiology from a joint program between the WPI Department of Biology and UMass Medical School, both in Worcester. In 1996, she joined Seprecor, now Synovian, where she worked on teams that developed Lunesta, Brovana, Zopanix for treating, respectively, insomnia, COPD, and asthma. In 2007, she became the founding CEO of two companies, Hygieia Therapeutics and Canterbury Laboratories, both of which went public under the name Or-Genix. Last year, she flexed her entrepreneurial muscle again and founded Or-Genix Therapeutics, a company developing prescription and non-prescription dermatology products. In 2016, she accepted the position of entrepreneur in residence at WPI's Fuze School of Business. It's the first one, right? You're the first entrepreneur in residence? Yeah, which is great. She served on the board of the trustees of the Massachusetts Biomedical Initiatives across the street here, and co-founded the New England Women in Science Executive Club, a nonprofit organization for executive women in the healthcare center. So, and on a side note here, which is fascinating and fantastic, in 2014, she was nominated by the town of Holden's fire chief for the Madeline Amy Sweeney Award for civilian bravery for saving the lives of two children who nearly drowned in a swimming pool accident. So, thank you. Congratulations.
How do you follow that up?
Yeah, I know. Next we'll have Kim Sullivan. She's the co-founder of localporch.com and a product development consultant. And she has a passion for building happy, motivated teams who are often remote and or distributed across multiple locations. She has a management information systems degree from Boston College, brings 15 years of program and product management experience from a wide range of industries, and most recently began her entrepreneurial journey working out of the Worcester Clean Tech Incubator. When Kim's not working, she loves to bike, ski, and be outdoors with her family and friends. We were just talking about mountain biking and road biking and motorcycle racing and all sorts of fun stuff. So, Kim will be followed by Alan Falcon. Alan's a technologist and entrepreneur with more than 25 years in his industry, and his background includes a unique history of software development and marketing, CIO-level consulting, entrepreneurship, and service delivery. He's worked on staff to CIOs of Fortune 500 companies and has served as consulting CIO for over a dozen small and mid-sized businesses across multiple industries. As CEO of Cumulus Global, Alan's on the leading edge of emerging cloud computing market and is seen as an industry innovator and thought leader. We were talking earlier about how he frequently has calls from magazines doing articles and seeking his opinion on what's going on in the industry, so that's great. Named one of the 10 to watch in 2014 by the Worcester Business Journal. He serves on the advisory board of the Next Gen Cloud Conference, so welcome, Alan. And we'll wrap things up with David Crouch, who's been here before with us. Thanks again for coming again, David. He's the president of 1024 Digital Solutions, which is in Worcester, downtown. He founded 1024 Digital Solutions in 2008, and over the last 9 years has assembled a team of experts with decades of experience building e-commerce solutions. And this experience has resulted in the development of a next-generation e-commerce platform, Slatwall Commerce. Slatwall is used by both B2B and B2C companies to manage the sale of products through online and offline channels. His clients include Magazine, Total Wine and More, Fast Company Magazine, Sotheby's, and Discover Central Mass. So thanks again, David, for joining us. So with that, I will ask Yael to come and begin things.
So all of my companies have always been virtual, and by that I mean it's been a small skeleton crew of people, and we've outsourced all of our work. So just to give you some terminology in the drug development space, a CRO can be either a contract research organization or it can be a clinical research organization. A CMO is a contract manufacturing organization. Both of these are required for drug development. Now, I put this up just to kind of scare you a bit. And has anybody here been involved in drug development, or is this, you're just hearing this for the first time? This is a Gantt chart. One of the things I want you to take a look at is the cost, and these are the costs just outsourcing. So imagine if you had to build an infrastructure to actually make your drug, to make the formulation, to test it in animals. It would be many, many times more expensive than that. And you'd have to hire a lot of people to come in and actually do the studies. And if the studies didn't work, you'd have to fire them. So it's really worth it to do a virtual model. In fact, most companies, mid-size and large, do outsource a lot of their work. So it's not just for small companies. And here's the other part of it, going all the way up to the first clinical trial. All of it is outsourced. Every last bit of it is outsourced. So that just gives you a sense. And if you go back and look at that, note how a lot of the tasks overlap. So it's easier if you can deploy a small skeleton crew of people to these different contract laboratories to monitor the study as it's going on, rather than have them bumping into one another in a company. And by the way, even Pfizer outsources a lot of their work. So I just put that up there to show you the scope of what needs to be done in developing a drug. So these are all of the things that you can outsource. You can outsource regulatory affairs, clinical development, e-publishing. Now, why is that there? The FDA now allows you to send your IND, your investigative new drug application, and your new drug application, which used to take up really trucks full of paper. It's now all done electronically. You just hit send and off your whole file goes. Due diligence, medical writing, manufacturing of your either biologic or your small molecule, drug substance, drug product. So drug substance is the raw drug. The drug product is what it is when it's together in a formulation. Formulations, CMC, is chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. That's the largest part of any document that goes to the FDA. Farm talks. Now, what do I have in-house with all my companies? Since I'm outsourcing all of this, I really need some people in-house who can monitor what's going on at the contract labs or the clinical labs. So I really have literally a handful of people. What I have now in my current company, what I had before, you really need a CMC person because that's the bulk of the work. So that person actually goes and monitors manufacturing and formulation work. They set up the protocols, they monitor what's happening in these outside labs. I'm the pharmacologist, toxicologist for our company. That's my other job. But in terms of pulling it all together, I also have, and he interfaces with me, a pharmacokineticist because he takes all the data from human and animal studies and analyzes where the drug is in the body and how long it exists. Everything else, we use consultants for. They'll come in, they'll ask what we need, we'll say, hey, we want to place such and such a study, will you find a CRO for us and go and monitor it? So we have right now, we really have 4 full-time people. We outsource our legal. And when we're ready to go into people, we'll bring in a chief medical officer, and he will monitor the clinical sites and regulatory affairs people we contract with as well. So why do you outsource? Well, the cost you saw was already expensive as it is. $5 million direct and indirect, and that's outsourcing. Imagine if you insourced, right? So you can overcome your internal deficiencies. You greatly reduce financial risk by limiting expenditure of lab equipment and infrastructure. And venture capitalists, by the way, would rather money go to product development and not to infrastructure. And so it allows a small company, if you operate in that way, it allows you to keep more money in your pocket and hold off partnering and keep a larger share of ownership for yourself for as long as you can. And it saves time and money. That's key. Time and money, because a lot of those studies are overlapped. They're done in tandem, and you can get them all done by going to Illinois, you would go to Cambridge, go all over the place, wherever there are CROs. Right now we have work sourced in California, China, and the UK. So when you outsource, well, we outsourced all the way through. You outsource for preclinical, that's your animal work, clinical work, and litigation and defense. You don't need to keep a lawyer hanging around for any legal issues. Vendor selection, this is where some experience in drug development comes in handy, because those of us who've been doing drug development for decades know which contract labs we can trust and who'll work well and timely. So you're looking for cost for the study, you're looking at time, because for every month that goes by that you're not developing your product, you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars from what you could be getting into your company once it's on the market. And quality. Once you've been around and doing drug development for a while, you know which vendors will give you the best quality studies. Like I said, you do want to retain in-house expertise, so when the data comes in, you can analyze the data from the contract labs. Very cost effective. Regulatory and ethical issues are very key when you go looking to outsource your development work. You want to do a lot of due diligence on them if you don't know that particular CRO or CMO. Pick up the phone, ask them for references if you don't know anything about them. A legitimate CRO and CMO will be happy to provide you with references about people they've worked with. And in particular, you want to make sure, especially when you get into the what we call the investigative new drug application enabling studies, you want to make sure that they have experience in FDA interactions. And you want to make sure that your site is FDA approved. That's very, very key. So that's what you have to do to pick the appropriate CRO and CMO. And you better make sure that they fully comprehend the therapeutic focus of your particular drug. For example, right now we're working on a topical for acne. I've taken it right to a CRO that has expertise in developing topical drugs. So you want to make sure that they have the therapeutic focus. And very importantly, like I said, time is money. You want to hold their feet to the fire. And one of the ways I do that is to make sure that we have weekly calls. I want the head of their team that's managing my project on the phone with me once a week to let me know if they've had any hiccups and where they are, if they're going to finish the project on time. So you've really got to work with a group of people that you know you can manage. And that comes with experience. We're working with people that we know pretty well. And they need to honor and respect your proprietary information. Most CROs will. And be open to on-site visits. So if I want to send my CMC person to China to check out, make sure, to see how our drug substance is working, it's being synthesized, I'll sometime put him on a plane and say to him, go. I want you to drop in on them. Make sure everything is working well. Now, believe it or not, these types of trips and traveling still end up being a whole lot cheaper than it is to bring all that expertise in-house. So when I sit down with, so let's say I've decided to source to CRO X to do my toxicology work, which requires a lot of animals. What I want to do is sit down with them. I go with my team, the people who are going to be directly involved in that, and we have a meeting. And we tell them what we need to do, the outcomes that we need to measure, and we sit down, we'll spend a day with them. It's worth the plane ride. Sit down, spend a day with them, and then get in queue for the study. You know, you've got to, these people are busy, so you got to get in queue, and then they'll contact you and let you know when they're ready to start. That's when we go back to that CRO, and we have a launch day where we sit there, we watch the first dosing occur. And then, like I said, we drop in on them. And I try and make it a point, since I'm the CEO, I try and make it a point to meet the CEO of the contract labs I'm working with. And always define right up front, you know, before you sign that contract, say, look, I want updates once a week, once every 2 weeks, get that all in writing. So no one says, oh, we didn't know that that was the expectation. So that's it. I mean, that's what goes into outsourcing drug development. A lot of companies do it. In fact, most.
Thanks, Yael. As I said earlier, we'll do questions at the end. Let me just grab Kim's presentation here.
All right, so I'm also going to be talking about remote teams, though I definitely took a different angle. I'm going to be talking about building high-performing teams. I have a heavy project program management background, and I'm also pulling from the internet, e-commerce, technology space, so totally different than what we just heard. So good diversity, hopefully. So I was going to go into my background. You heard a summary already. I'm going to talk about the trade-offs of co-located teams versus remote or distributed teams. Go through a couple additional considerations, but then I want to get to the meat of the presentation to really talk about techniques to use and tools to use with remote teams. Again, whether fully virtual or distributed. And then being a project manager by trade, I'm going to give you just some meeting management tips because that's really, really, really important. You can lose a lot of ground with not productive meetings. I mean, both in an office, but even more so with remote teams. So you could see a couple of the companies I've worked at. I've worked at a variety, financial services, portal software, enterprise software, most recently e-commerce, and as Phil mentioned, the last 1.5 to 2 years, I co-founded a company called Local Porch. It was an online e-commerce handmade website, and next up I'll probably stick with e-commerce or get into product development consulting again. But the key takeaway here is the majority of the companies I've worked for or have ran have pretty much all have had remote teams. My startup was fully remote, California, Utah, Massachusetts, DC. Okay, so I'm going to just go through this pretty fast. So looking at the different structures of co-located teams versus remote, that can be remote and distributed again. So the real positives, right, of being co-located, especially in a high-tech startup, you know, you get to have those ad hoc conversations. You get to kind of walk by someone's office and kind of read them, see how they're doing, make sure they know what they're working on. It's a casual way to check in rather than scheduling a meeting. When you're running a meeting, everyone's in the room, you could read the room, really see, okay, are they listening? Do I need to go and have a follow-up conversation with someone after, with someone, not really happy with the direction of the meeting? So it's really, really good for just team dynamics. And then collaboration in person, very, very helpful to have a whiteboard and be in a room together, certainly. Drawbacks, Colocated, your hiring range is really set at that geographic location. And then in the chance that you do have a couple of remote team members, it's really, really hard when you only have a handful. Someone moves away and the company lets them work remote, or you have a partner or a vendor that all of a sudden now you have to work with a remote team. Well, if you're not set up to handle it, or only one person's on the phone and everyone else is in the room, it doesn't go very well from my experience. So now switching to remote teams. So you have a broader hiring range, and it's a really, really big recruiting lever, more so now than ever, because it provides people that schedule flexibility, location flexibility. Millennials more and more, they want to live wherever they want to live, and they want to move here, and they want to move there. So it really becomes a perk, and I think you could get a lot more talent from anywhere in the world. And then you obviously save money as well, both on office space, but if you're a Boston startup or a Silicon Valley startup and you can hire someone else, you're probably going to save money. Now, drawbacks. So you don't get that face-to-face I was talking about unless you actually proactively schedule an off-site, or on-site, I should say, where everyone comes together. And meeting productivity, very challenging, so I'll get to that. And then communication breakdown in organization, it's always a challenge, but you add remote players or you're fully remote, and wow, it's a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to talk a lot about communication. So now, every company's different. Some are going to be always fully on-site. Some are going to be fully virtual. More and more are going fully virtual. This is just a quick anecdote. So this company, Zapier, we were just in the paper. They're a San Francisco startup. They automate web apps about 2 months ago. And they are actually offering delocation packages out of San Francisco and the Silicon Valley because they know the cost of living is so high. And since they are fully remote and fully virtual, they want to encourage their employees to move somewhere where it's cheaper to live. So tangentially related, but really, really interesting and representative of a company that is fully remote. So, when you're choosing what's the right model for you, distributed, the combo of the two, you have to think about your company stage, your budget, associated costs, and then time zones is something I just want to spend a quick minute on. So I've worked with teams in many locations. So my favorite, I was in Utah, and we had a Costa Rican team, same time zone. Awesome. Really, really cool. It was the first time that ever happened. So that was really luxurious. My startup, like I said, we were kind of all over domestically. Only a 3-hour difference, but we were bootstrapping, so we had to be meeting off hours. That made it really, really challenging. We had some late nights here on the East Coast to accommodate Utah post-work hours. And then you could also have the other extreme, right, where you're, almost completely opposite in time zones. Now, there's actually benefits to it if you have enough communication and tasks are very clear for people and you have an escalation process in place. So in a development organization, right, you get a new build and you're ready for people to test it. Well, if the build has no showstoppers, meaning, people could actually use it, then you could come in the next morning, everything could be tested, and you could release it. But then on the flip side, if you get a showstopper, you could lose a whole day. So not having that appropriate escalation, the build gets stuck, you don't know, it never completes, while making sure people know who to call. Or if people don't know what they're working on and you're not there to help guide them, you lose a day. So again, communication, really, really important. And then obviously you got to think about your team. What's really, what are their needs in terms of attention and focus? Everyone's different. Some people are going to say they want to work in an office. Some people want to work remote. That's why I really like a hybrid model, because you could accommodate everyone's personality types. And everyone's going to get job satisfaction in a different setting. Okay, so Now to the more exciting stuff. So techniques to work with remote teams. So if you do choose to go distributed or fully virtual, these are some techniques that I've found really, really helpful in running teams remotely. So talked about communication, but going a layer deeper there, making sure you send a lot of updates. So you're not going to see people in the hallways, so frequent communication. I'm going to get to a tool that we use heavily called Slack, but it's basically somewhere where you could just post incremental bites of information and give people updates rather than sending a lengthy email that people might not read. So finding other tools outside of email, I think, is really, really important, more and more so now. Now, increase one-on-ones, so I recommend doing it over video. We did everything over video chat. That way you could see the people and you see how they take, this is a direction shift that we're taking, or, maybe you're not delivering great news or you're giving constructive feedback. Video chat is so important. And then the concept of virtual co-working and virtual office hours. So we would tell our team, okay, every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m., let's all get online. We're not having meetings, we're all just working, and we could hop on chat each other. We all know we're going to be there, and you could pick up a phone and have an ad hoc conversation if you need it. Really, really powerful, and it simulates being co-located. And then same with virtual office hours, all right, I'm going to be available these hours each week. Call me whenever you want. I promise I will be online. Chat me. We could just, pick up Skype and have a quick video chat. Then strategic co-location I still think is important. My bootstrapping team, I actually flew to Utah to get us over the hump to get our beta released. And just from a team building standpoint, I think it's really important to try to have some FaceTime, the occasional drop in. And then consistency. So we've all heard, oh, I didn't know what time the meeting was. Well, if you have consistent meeting times, whether you're in an office or virtual, that really helps, but virtual more so because, people might not check their calendar. You can't go run down the hallway and say, hey, you coming to the meeting, Bob? So just being very consistent with meeting time systems, procedures. Then again, everyone needs to have a clear understanding of what they're working on, having the tools in place to do that, which I'll get to, and then transparency around the tasks that are kind of going through your workflow. It's, everyone knows who is this going to. There's transparency of as a task completes and it's going to another team. Even better if you could automate the notification of that. So it's very transparent. It's very accountable. People know who's working on what, and you can find that anytime. So if something gets stuck in queue, everyone can see it. And then working with your team, what are the right tools? What do they like to use? Because if they can have a say in that, they're going to use them and be a lot more bought into it. So my number one rule, assume you're not communicating enough. Everyone knows if you've worked with me or for me, I am an over-communicator, and it's better than under-communicating, especially with remote teams. So here are my favorite facilitation tools. So Slack, I love Slack. Who's heard of Slack? Anybody? Yeah, okay, a fair amount of folks. Slack is phenomenal. I have a screenshot I will show you. It's essentially a messaging app. Desktop phone, you could do file sharing, you could have teams or channels, so you could have a sales channel, you could have a engineering channel, you could have a project channel, and you could use it like a bulletin board where you could post a message in there, and then you could kind of alert everyone in that channel to look at their Slack, and they'll all read it. So you hit a milestone, you get a new customer, you hit a metric. Well, you could just give quick tidbits there and alert everyone. And there's a lot of fun plugins, incredible amount of integrations. I was actually just reading up on some more that I didn't know existed. There's, annotated screenshots you could do. There's polls you could do. I mean, it's endless the number of apps that you could integrate with Slack. I actually haven't tried their audio and video, and I just saw they released screen sharing. I just saw it today on Product Hunt, and so I haven't used that for any of those, which brings me to my next point. Join Me is what I typically use for audio, video, and screen sharing. Now, Slack, if you've used any of those new features, let me know. But Join Me I found is definitely the most reliable. Just to have all three together is tough. And again, I'm thinking from a bootstrapping lens, so these are free tools. I mean, if you could pay for tools, you probably could find very reliable software. But if you want a free one, Join Me is great. Uber Conference is awesome for audio and screen sharing, but they can't do video, but what you can do is record. So I recorded a lot of customer conversations, and you could store them all there, log them all there. It's very easy, real simple. So I like it for recording. And then Skype, Google Hangouts, other alternatives. Now, collaboration. So I mentioned being in the office, co-located, right? Much easier to collaborate. One tool I found very helpful is Google Docs. So these are, most of you have probably heard of Google Docs, but you could basically edit inline together without really causing any problems. And you could pull up a spreadsheet, a Google drawing, a PowerPoint. Really, really helpful for real-time document collaboration. And then Trello. I'll show you a screenshot of Trello. Has anyone heard of Trello here? Oh, you guys are in for a treat. Trello is awesome. It's free. If you're looking for a lightweight task management tool, it is my favorite. And it integrates with Slack. So Slack, their website says Slack and Join Me go together like peanut butter and jelly, but I would argue that it's Trello and Slack. So here's some screenshots. So on the left, you have Trello. So what this is, it's kind of like Post-it notes. You could create as many columns as you want. The little white rectangles, those are like Post-it notes. You could decide any fields you want there. It's really customizable. You could have labels, you could have people's names, assign them. It basically tracks tasks through workflow. So you could drag from design into, the development team backlog into, okay, now it's started in progress. And then with each transition, you could get an alert in Slack so you know when work's moving through the workflow, which is so great. And then a couple other Slack integrations that I really, really like. MailChimp, it's a email marketing tool. So you could get notified every time someone subscribes or unsubscribes. You could get notifications from GitLab. So you kick off a build, you check in code, build complete successfully, not successfully, you could know everything. If you get an email at a certain email address, you could get notified. So our support email for my startup, every time we got a support email, it went here. So it's endless what you could integrate. I mean, Slack, you could basically live in Slack all day and not be an email and know when you need to open other tools. As long as it integrates, I mean, this is the only thing you need to have open. And you could be on multiple Slack teams, so you could see the drop down on local porch. Well, I had one or two other teams that I could switch between. Unfortunately, the web client you can't, but the desktop client you can. All right, so I'm just going to end with some meeting management tips. Now, all of these are very much applicable just for meetings in the office, but I couldn't not give these tips just again because remote meetings are just so unproductive and they're painful and everyone hates meetings and they always go so long and people don't follow them, and I'm all about an efficient, if you could kill a 30-minute meeting in 15 minutes, then do it. So, so this is what I do. So confirm the attendance. You can't go grab Bob who's missing the meeting, so making sure you Slack them, chat them, call them, make sure everyone's coming so you don't waste anyone's time. If you're gonna use technology during the meeting, get on 15 minutes early. It never works. No matter how good you are or how many times you use them, it doesn't work. So just start early, have someone join, do a trial run. You'll always need it. Then roll call. I cannot stand when I'm actually a participant and people are coming and going in the room and you have no idea who you're talking in front of. It's very important to know who's there when you're trying to assign tasks, and just to even know the audience. So always announcing that if you're running the meeting. Same with who comes onto the conference call. And then one speaker at a time, multiple conversations in a room. If you have remote parties, they have no idea what's going on. You've lost them the second two conversations start. Then pause to make sure everyone's following. This is meeting management 101, but I just can't help myself. These are very important for remote meetings. If people aren't talking, call on them. Make sure they're listening because they're probably not. Recap, repeat often, and then if you're a participant and you can't hear, probably other people can't hear too, so always speak up. And then the obvious, send meeting notes with clear action items. And that goes back to remote team members always need to know what their priorities are and in what order. So making sure that's very clear. The second you have action items, get that into Trello. Then you'll definitely see them go through the workflow because then you'll find it in Slack. So that's the tools that I've used over the years that I find really, really helpful. So thanks for listening. You want me to do it? I can just.
He actually doesn't have.
You got it?
I'm
Okay.
not doing slides. I figured it's 6:30 on a sunny day, no more slides, at least not from me. I don't know. I have slides. You've that, so I'll talk a little bit, I may wander a little bit. I feel overdressed, so let me use the code. we're a tie. 90% of the time, being a little bit of background, I'm Alan Falcon, CEO of Cumulus Global. We're a cloud solutions provider. So we are the company that helps startups and other businesses virtualize how they operate, how their teams work, how they communicate. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that, and sort of, the term is we eat our own dog food. And I'll go in a little bit about how we do it. So typically I'm in jeans and a nice shirt, because when you're doing video conferences, no one sees you below the desk line, right? So my CFO is known, he loves wearing shorts. He's one of those guys, 3 feet of snow, blizzard conditions. He's in flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt. So he keeps a dress shirt in his office that he'll put on, right? No one has to know. It's one step shy of having the puppet in front of the camera, right? So we were asked to sort of cover a couple of questions. I'm a little traditional, so I stuck to that and give a different perspective. We're virtual in a way that's not involved in outsourcing. We're virtual in our infrastructure. Now, I'm a company of 10 people, and I do have physical office space in Westboro. And most of my company, it lives in the area and chooses to come into the office most of the time. But there's actually very little requirement that they have to do it, because we're set up where our people can work from anywhere at any time. And we've done that, one, because it demonstrates the technologies we're selling and promoting to our customers, but also because it creates a quality of life and a culture for the company that's actually helped us attract and retain talent. And there's some other reasons why we went virtual as well. We're a service business, first and foremost, sales and service. So for us, resiliency is key. So several years ago, when we had the multi-day ice storm and people were without power, well, we're the IT company, right? So we can't be out of service when our customers need to get their systems back online. So virtualizing our infrastructure gives us a level of resiliency. The fact is, during that ice storm, my chief operating officer ran all of our help services out of the car in his driveway. And the reason he was in his car and not in his house is because he was using the Wi-Fi hotspot on his phone to get Wi-Fi to his laptop, and his phone battery kept dying, so he could sit in the car, be warm, and keep his phone and his computer charged. Okay, our clients had no idea that he was in his driveway because his neighborhood hadn't been plowed out, and my 2 support people were working from home. My house was without power and internet, so I was at the Westboro House of Pizza. I rented a booth for the day for $10 and a deal that anyone who sat down had to order a sandwich. I kid you not. So I bought 4 people lunch over the course of the day, had some good meetings. Our clients had no idea that we were out of the office and our fridge was defrosting all over the kitchen floor. The second reason is staffing, efficiency, and retention. In today's workplace, there are 4 generations of workers. There's the in-person meeting, the conference call or phone call, the email, and the text. Right? Now, my staff tends to vary between email and text as far as age or evolution, if you will, but you have to be able to address it all. And we have found that particularly with millennials in the workforce and the desire not necessarily to change jobs, but to do something or be someplace different, as was already mentioned, having a virtual infrastructure makes that possible. Case in point, one of my marketing team members who's always worked for us part-time, she's never wanted to go full-time, because she likes doing other things and does a lot of volunteer work, decided she found this great nonprofit in Brooklyn she wanted to work for. She upped and moved. Doesn't matter. Her work environment worked with her. So where she used to sometimes sit in an office or work from her room in her parents' house in Westboro, now she's at a friend's couch or in a coffee shop, with some very hip music in the background somewhere in Brooklyn. No, she does not wear a fedora. Next reason we went is intellectual property protection. A lot of what we do, and this is an advantage by virtualizing the infrastructure, it's easier, particularly when we're working with contractors and partners on projects, to give them access to our systems so that they're working in our environment and we're capturing the intellectual property. And then I'll do a little tangent here and talk about free tools versus non-free, right? Gmail.com is free. And with that, you get Google Docs, and you can write documents, and you can collaborate for free. A G Suite basic account is $50 a year. If you're business, if you're a solopreneur and your business isn't worth $50 a year, to have the secure version where the data's private and you're protected and you're treating your intellectual property and your customers or your partners or your coworkers is confidential, then your business isn't worth anything. So free tools are great to get you to a certain point, but at some point you need the protection of the license agreement that you're paying for and the privacy that comes with it, the security that typically comes with it, and the other capabilities as well. We clearly do it to lower our capital expenditure. I've got 2 pieces of equipment in what used to be our computer room. I've got my wireless access router, well, 3 pieces. I've got the Fios connection, I've got the wireless access point that gives us our Wi-Fi, and I've got a physical switch that connects our hardwired stuff that supported our older phone system. Our new phones are internet-based, connected to a cloud service. We actually don't need a physical desktop phone anymore. We can do everything off our computers or off our cell phones through the company phone system. Some people prefer to have the physical handset anyways, and those now work off of our Wi-Fi. We don't need to hardwire them anymore for cabling. So as our cable installer actually did a horrible job, so as our drops die, we just let them die. We don't work it. So we've lowered our capital expense, and more importantly, we're geography free. Like I said, we've got people working. So, and the range of hiring was a great point. I have salespeople in New York and Atlanta, and I'd like to say I'm the business genius who thought for what we do and serving companies nationally, it'd be great to have an office in New York and an office in Atlanta. The reality is I found 2 really good salespeople. One lives sort of out on Long Island and loves to work in Manhattan, and the other one lives in Atlanta. He would never move. He would never relocate. And it's not because he's a young millennial who thinks Atlanta's hip, it's because he's got his family, his roots are settled, his kids are in their ages, they're involved in activities with friends. He'd never consider moving to a company that required him to relocate. And so it's great. So they work from where they want to work, and the way they want to work. We support customers right now in all 7 North American time zones. And so we demonstrate our use of the tools and our use of virtuality and how we interact with our customers. So we sell cloud computing. So we operate our company both in G Suite, formerly Google Apps, and in Office 365. Why? Because if I'm going to sell you a Chevy, but I show up at your door in a Toyota, I'm going to have a hard time convincing you to buy a Chevy, right? So when we're working with companies who are interested in Office 365, we interact with them from that environment. So when we do our sales calls, we do it using Skype for Business. If someone's interested in G Suite, we'll do it using Google Hangouts, or now Google Meet, and present it so that they see the tools and options. 99.9% of our sales work is remote. We make last year in 2016, we made fewer than 15 on-site sales calls. And when our customers say, hey, you want to come out and do the presentation, our response is actually we'd rather do it by video conference with screen sharing. So you can see the 2 reasons. 1, they can see the technology, and 2, that cost of that sales call would get embedded in our pricing. And so by doing most of my sales work by video conference, I can lower our deployment costs for our customers by 20%. It gives me a price advantage over my competitors without hurting my gross margins. And it actually lowers my net margin. I'm not paying travel expenses. I don't have a salesman spending 3 hours driving to have 2 hours of meetings, right? There's a much higher level of productivity. And it works. We started doing that in the education sector because they don't have money. And it's a real easy sell for them. It's happened on the business side as well. It also gives us customer reach. We've never met in person any of our customers in Hawaii, no matter how many times I offer to have them fly me out there at their expense. Okay. So we use Office 365 and G Suite. For applications that require a traditional Windows environment, we have a virtual desktop environment that we remote into. Again, I can walk into a hotel lobby, sit down at their business center with nothing but an internet browser and that internet connection, and I can run all the financials of my company, and when I log off of that environment, there's no footprint that I ever existed there. Totally secure. I've run payroll from an airplane. And I've reviewed numbers with our accountants on a conference call from an airplane. JetBlue is great Wi-Fi, by the way. As I mentioned, we have a cloud-based phone service, so we're not tethered to a traditional handset at all, but we can if we want to, and my phone number travels with me. So if I start our app, our phone app on my iPhone, then someone calls my direct line, it'll ring on my phone. If not, it's ringing on my computer if the app is running, or on my desk, or they're going straight to voicemail. And I'll get a transcription, and I can listen to it and respond at my convenience. We live by video conferencing. Our company has a rule, which is no conference calls. 55% of communication is nonverbal, so we always schedule the video conference. If our customers or potential customers don't want to do the video conference, fine, it's up to them to opt out, but we're always on with video. In fact, I tell my salespeople that they need to have the video running even if the only other person on the call is dialing in, because if nothing else, they're going to see their own body language. And guess what? If you're leaning forward in the chair and you're smiling and you're engaged, that tone is going to go over the audio conference and be a much more positive interaction, and you'll get a better vibe out to your potential customer or your customer, and they'll respond in kind. Right? So I want them to be, in a sense, self-conscious about how they look and how they're presenting themselves, so that it should be no different than an in-person, face-to-face meeting, what they do with the body language. The other tool that we have, given our industry, is we have networks. So the question is, how do I deal with the fact that, great, all my technical staff is here in New England, but I've got customers in Halifax and Fairbanks, Alaska, and Hawaii, and Salt Lake City. We belong to networks of other businesses similar to ours. And what's nice about these networks, and I know we're not the only industry that has them, is the organizers of the networks actually vet the participants. We're in one network, it took us 4.5 months to join. The average is about 5 months, so we're right about average, to get vetted and qualified. And it has preset rules of engagement. So if I have a customer in that rare occasion, right now, only about 1 in 600 support calls really warrants someone physically going on site. I've got a network of companies I can literally call and dispatch one of their employees. Even if I've never used them before, they know what the fee is that they're going to get for that call and the revenue split for their activity, because they're part of the network. And they don't have to have me issue a purchase order, and they just get a check, right, once the call is complete. And it makes it that easy. The tools give us flexibility to staff up and down with contractors, and we do that seasonally. Interns, co-op students, part-time folks for project work, or for backfilling my folks when they're going to take vacations and things of that nature. And again, I still control that intellectual property. There are some pros and cons, and many of them, I won't repeat everything she said, but FaceTime is really important. And since you don't have that casual conversation across the hall or down the aisle, you can't overhear what someone's saying over the cube wall and interject. My staff loves when I do that. I'll be sitting in my office working, and two of them will be talking, and I'll say, "What? What are you saying? No, that's not right." They love that. You lose that. So what you have to do is you have to be available. So Slack's a good tool. We like chat. It's sort of what my team gravitated to. So they know at any point in time they can chat. And what generally happens is I'll get a question, or they'll send a question, a response will go back. And our rule is sort of 5 transactions. If you're back and forth more than twice, so 4 messages, the 5th should be the click to start the video conference. Again, if you're going back and forth on something, the video conference, typically my team's using Google Hangouts most of the time. That Google Hangout takes less than 12 seconds to start. It's fast, it's easy. You get the visual confirmation, and you get the visual cues for those. So my folks are on and off video chat, throughout the day. In our conference room, we have Chromebox for meetings. So anytime you schedule any one of our conference rooms, there's an automatic video conferencing session set up. So that when we're in the conference room and my 2 salespeople are at their desk, excellent. They can see us, we can see them individually. It's built into that, it's just built into that environment, so we get that visual cue. And so that's another thing we'll say, if you're going to virtualize and have people working remotely, you need video conferencing space. You need space so that when the team is together, when you've got a team in one spot and teams in another, or individuals someplace else, that people can still see one another, okay? And that helps with only one person talk at a time. Because you can tell when someone's getting ready to speak, right? You know, if I'm in a meeting, I'm getting agitated, I lean forward and I start doing this, right? So my team knows that if someone's talking and I'm doing this, as soon as they stop, I'm speaking, right? Where if I'm sort of sitting back like this, you know, they know I'm either happy or I'm thinking about my kid's baseball game tonight, something like that. And so it creates that environment. So there are risks involved in having the remote team, certainly task management, communications, having tools in place. We're right now, we played with Trello, we liked it, we went with Hive for now, simply because it integrates in the G Suite environment. We're testing it out, and we're probably going to start selling the product as well. So again, we eat our own dog food. We have a number of other tools that we use throughout the day that provide for that, you know, collaboration and that teamwork and that transparency. And so that's sort of our approach, and that's the approach we advocate for our customers who are ready to go there. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And get David to bring us home here.
Okay, so Phil did a bit of a intro earlier. Dave Crouch, I'm the president of 1024. This is our office in downtown Worcester. Used to be the Telegram Gazette building. Our expertise is in engineering, developing, and supporting e-commerce applications. We currently are a team of 20, although I've got 2 jobs posted. So we will be 22 hopefully soon, and about 50 active clients at any one time. Slatwall, Phil had mentioned earlier, so we're a bootstrap company. We've been building Slatwall as a product for 6 years or so. It's an e-commerce platform. It's back office, so clients use it to manage products, orders, accounts, promotions, inventory, fulfillment, et cetera, et cetera. One of the advantages our platform has is you can sell multiple types of products through it, not just physical goods, hats and T-shirts, but events and subscriptions and gift cards and some other things as well. Again, Phil mentioned some of our clients, but Sotheby's, $8.5 billion auction company is replatforming on Slatwall. Total Wine & More just opened up here in Shrewsbury. Largest independent wine retailer in the country is also a client. Fast and Ink magazines, Discover Central Mass, and Davol is a medical manufacturer down in Rhode Island. So some of our virtual challenges, and again, I think Alan did a great job covering some of the benefits of being virtual. We didn't choose to be virtual. It just happened that way. I started the company in 2008. It was me for the first year, and basically we've brought on 2 people a year since then to get up to where we are now. Our goal has been not to outsource. We don't, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Kim and Alan both talked about the importance of having a team there on site, and we really wanted that and felt that it was important. The other is security. We are an e-commerce company. We are PCI level 1 compliant. Just becomes a lot harder to do that as you get more and more remote people, and you're outsourcing as well. So this is a bit of a picture of where we are now. We didn't choose to be virtual. Our infrastructure is all virtual, and most of our team is internal, but as you can see here, we became virtual. We got 20 team members, 19 of them are here in Worcester. We do have one in California. Again, not planned that way, but same as Alan, we found the right person. And so he's in California, and that's where he lives. They all work on about 4 to 6 projects each at any one time. Even the people here in Worcester work from home a day to a day and a half a week. And we do have 2 to 3 contractors at any one time, and the ones we use most often, one's in California, one's in London. And that's our team, but then we've also got the clients that we're working with, right? And they're throughout the US and Canada, one or two in Europe. They're obviously all virtual. And those client projects, we've got 50 to 60 of those going at any one time. And they all have teams that are involved in those projects, so they're obviously all virtual. And we also have internal projects. We're not only building client projects, but we're also building the Slatwall product. We've got our marketing and infrastructure projects that are going on at any one time. So what are our challenges? Primary one is project management. With all of those projects and all of those diverse teams, how are we handling that? And I'm gonna just talk about some of the tools that we use, and again, some overlap here in terms of some of the tools that these guys have already talked about. And the second one is communication. So from a project management standpoint, nobody has mentioned this yet. Teamwork is a tool that we use. We came to this through many painful years. We used Basecamp for a few years, which is pretty popular. And that fell down on its face about 4.5 years ago. So we went to Teamwork. And what that does for us is centralize all the project data. So clients are not allowed to email us. They have to message us through Teamwork. And if they're adverse to that, we'll actually give them an email address to send to, and that'll automatically create a message there. And it's great because even if they reply to a message that comes to Teamwork through email, it automatically creates that reply in Teamwork. But we need our entire team to see what's going on. And if somebody's emailing directly to one of our team members, it just gets lost. And support, when we're running, multi-million-dollar e-commerce sites and something's happened to it and one guy knows and nobody else does, it doesn't work. Our tasks are all there in Teamwork. And that's just not the task for my development team, but it's also the task for the client as well. Everybody has visibility. And those tasks have details to them. They have a deadline to them. Our team estimates how long it's going to take them to do, so that all of that is there. And then when it's completed, they actually put their time in. So now we've got an estimated time versus an actual time, and we can get all kinds of great reporting there. So the time piece, and then files, file sharing, design files, database files. Everything is there. So Teamwork holds everything. The other big thing that it gives us is permission control. Basecamp didn't do a very good job of this, especially when they went to their new version. So on a project level and even on a task level or a message level, files, we can control who sees it. So for us, again, we've got clients that are accessing this and internal. So if we have a file we want to post and we want just our internal people to see it and just one person internally to see it, we can do that. It's really granular in terms of permissions, which is great for us. So Teamwork is pretty critical. GitHub is another people haven't mentioned. So we're a software development company. So GitHub is essentially version control. It's a cloud repository for all of our code. So all of our developers start working locally on their laptop, but as soon as they're done with that, it gets pushed up to GitHub and is in the cloud, right? So it's it provides that version control. It's got private and public repositories. Again, we've got clients that access some of our GitHub repositories, and some are just private to us. So it gives us that control. Our development leads can see version histories on all the code commits. We can do code reviews, and take a look and see what people have done. It gives alerts when new versions have been posted or new commits have been made, so those emails are going out to everybody on the team. The other thing I didn't mention is Slatwall is open source. So we have about 300 or so developers around the world that also do use Slatwall. About 30 of those are able to commit to the core. We review every one of those commits, and they have to sign all kinds of paperwork in order to do it, but that's managed through GitHub. They put a commit in for maybe an integration with a shipping provider in Germany, and then we go in, check all that out. If it's good, we'll commit it into the core. So GitHub is really important for us. It's constant. We actually have, one of our guys wrote a dashboard that runs on a television in the office, showing everybody's commits on a minute-by-minute basis, and they love that. Alan mentioned G Suite. So I've been using Google since the day we launched. You know, we pay them for G Suite and run all of our email, calendar, you know, so I can see everybody's calendar across the entire team and know when I can schedule appointments and when I can't. Google Drive is huge for us. Last I looked, I think we had about 8,500 docs in Google Drive. And we're only a team of 20. So there's a lot going on there. We use Google Groups as well for support on the open source community. So we have a Google group that they can post questions to, and we monitor and answer. We also use Hangouts constantly. So people working from home, guys in California, clients, Hangouts is both the IM and the video chat, which is now moving to Meet, as Alan just said, a little bit more robust. We actually just turned that on this week. Not so robust, well, we've just been playing. But anyway, you know, Google's moving more kind of supposedly more business friendly with the Hangouts. Alan mentioned briefly virtual phone systems. We've been using RingCentral for a number of years now. And essentially, we don't have a phone system. We use RingCentral. It's cloud-based. It gives us a lot of scalability. We can add and drop people, you know, within a matter of minutes on a dashboard. You don't have to have a physical phone. You know, you can run a soft phone off your laptop, which most of our guys do. It can ring on your cell phone. You can, you know, have it ring wherever you want to and in different sequences. And but you can have a physical phone as well. We have 5 of them in the office that we use as well. RingCentral also provides our virtual meetings. So we use that for the conferencing. So everybody gets a conference line, and it can have up to, I think, 50 people on that. And also the screen share piece. So RingCentral we use for the screen sharing with our clients typically. It's a little bit more robust than Hangouts with clients, and a little bit easier for us to record and do things like that. It also integrates with Google, so you can run a sidebar in Gmail and call right from there if you wanted to. And also our CRM tool it integrates with. So from within our CRM, we can make a call. It'll go out through RingCentral, and then it'll log that call into our into that contact in the CRM as well. Yeah, so that's it.
I wanted to start out with Yael and ask a question on, you're in a very heavily regulated and scrutinized market, and so what considerations do you need to have when working with an outside virtual contracting team in terms of their legal responsibilities and their, you know, is it any different than in the normal world?
No, it would be the same thing you would do if you were in a big pharmaceutical company. Before you would even send them your drug substance or your drug product, you'd have you sit down with your lawyer and draw up a contract, and that then goes over to their lawyer and gets tweaked, and then it comes back, and then when we're satisfied that liability issues are, and you want to make sure that you're not going to get sued if someone, you know, gets a rash from using your drug product, and it also covers any force majeure. You know, if your drug product that you just spent $2 million on is destroyed in a fire in their place. But no, everything is done legally and upfront. And we always work with reputable CROs. I mean, I wouldn't take anything that I was developing to put into people to a small CRO that none of my other colleagues and other companies had never used. It's too valuable. You know, you're talking about millions of dollars worth of work, and you just can't afford to see it go by the way. But so your number one asset in your virtual pharmaceutical company is your lawyer. Those contracts have to be very solid.
Thank you. Kim, I was writing a question down, and as I was writing it, you answered it. Which was, and the question was, is the workforce today, is the people on the younger end of the scale, are they expecting to work in a virtual environment? And you kind of answered that, but I had a follow-on question to that, which is, do you think it's advisable, does it happen, as you know, or do you think it's advisable for somebody to, right out of school, be in a virtual environment and not be in the office having that interaction?
It's a great question. No, I think you need to have both in your kind of toolkit or tool belt. I think that's how you learn those people skills, the soft skills, how to be professional. You know, I think you have to do that initially. And even with new companies, establishing that with a new company, I think it's helpful, maybe not required. I mean, if you're consulting, you know, you might go visit a couple times those first couple months to create those relationships. But it's really, really helpful if you're a full-time employee to be on site initially. You know, you gain their trust, you get to know them, you get to know the people you'll be working with. Then when you're calling up people on the phone, they know who you are and you have a relationship and they're more inclined to answer the phone. So I think that's a great question.
Great. Anybody in the audience have any questions for our panelists here? Mark?
Turns out I spend a lot of time doing virtual teaching, so a lot of the stuff you discussed is relevant to that world. So here's one of the challenges. I think when it's virtual, it requires a whole lot more communication and more attention to communication. You don't have the nonverbal communication cues going on. And then the question is, how much is enough? So Kim, for example, mentioned there's never enough. But on the flip side, people have to get work done. And so, you know, I'd love to hear some comments about how do you determine whether you're doing enough or you're doing too much or you're doing too little?
So I'd love to take that, at first at least. So definitely staying out of email, I think will help let people get work done. So doing a lot, but in the right places, and the right increments. So small updates in your chat program to your team, you know, just the key updates to keep people engaged, even just like a one-liner, you know, once a day, just so people know what's going on or what you're working on. But yeah, I think staying out of email helps because that's where you get a lot of the distractions and clutter. And then, you know, having those meetings, you obviously don't want to have too many meetings, but that's the case in co-location as well. I mean, you always have to be sensitive of people's time. But it's a great point. You don't want to be emailing people all the time. So yeah, if you stay out of email, I feel like it's pretty safe.
And I'll add to that. We give our team tools to help manage how much communication they're receiving. So every tool we use to collaborate has a do not disturb feature. Mm-hmm. So that if they're on a conference call or they just need a half-hour block of time to get work done, they're able to do that and not get that physical interruption. You even have to, you know, type OTP to tell someone they're on the phone. We also provide our team with a tool that does, since so much of our communication with our customers is by email, that does filtering of inbound email and actually has an AI engine that learns over time what can be sent to later. So things like newsletters and, you know, that kind of stuff ends up in a folder and it'll get delivered to their inbox at 6 o'clock at night when they can review it in the evening if they're home if they want to, or they can manage that themselves. And always put something away and have it come back to them as a new unread message in the future. And so having those types of tools, but we've also set some rules, right? My team knows that calendars aren't just for marking appointments that they have. It's also marking time when they don't want or can't be available. So I expect them, you know, if they're going to be out of the office for a doctor's appointment or they need travel time to a meeting, in the rare occasions that we're traveling to meetings, or they've got a project that they're trying to wrap up and they need a 2-hour block of time, they should put that on the calendar so that they show up as busy. Because that'll actually trigger the way the phone system treats inbound calls and the way the chat system works.
share a funny story with you for a second. So John Bourne, who was a faculty member at Olin College of Engineering, was really a pioneer in virtual education. He led the national organization, blah, 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 blah. Really nice human being. And one day he said to me, you know, Mark, I really prefer to communicate with human beings through my computer.
Very good, very good. Anybody else on the, I got a question down here.
I'm having a Phil Donahue flashback.
Yeah. Glasses and name.
One of the advantages of having a virtual team that was mentioned, I think Kim had mentioned that, was the ability to have people who aren't necessarily full-time team members, so they could have more flexible hours. So this is kind of a general question for any of you with virtual teams. How many of you have team members that are working less than full-time? And what sort of marketplace are you looking at to find, or where should I look to find people who are interested in more flexible things?
Looking to hire?
Yeah, I put together, skills that I definitely don't have full-time equivalent jobs for.
Right.
Well, for us, so we have, right now we have 3 people who are not full-time. 2 of them are remote all or some of the time, virtual, out of the office. We're finding, for the type of roles in our company that work well for not full-time position, we're actually finding college campuses are, a great place to find folks. And, networking in, in other places where you see people working part-time. So we've tapped some of our customers who are nonprofits at times to see if any of their folks who are volunteering or working part-time for them are looking to take, get an extra gig, whether it's long-term part-time or project-related. They're out there. I mean, what we're finding, particularly with millennials, is if they can eke by a living, they don't necessarily want the 40 to 60 hour work week. They're happy with 25 to 30 hours a week because they have other interests we want to pursue. My marketing manager is a perfect example. She's in Brooklyn doing video production for a nonprofit that helps troubled teens. And she's doing that about 20 hours a week, and she's working for us 30 hours a week, and she's having the time of her life. We know when she's available, when she's not. She's careful not to miss anything critical from a meeting schedule standpoint. So the communication and having a calendar and having set schedules is key to that. But the fact that she's happier, she's a more productive worker as well.
Drug development is different than what these folks are talking about. So drug development, there are 4 of us. We're all full-time, but drug development in and of itself isn't really full-time until the data comes in. So for example, right now with we have 2 lead compounds. One of them is in process chemistry. In other words, we're finding more efficient ways to scale up, to make hundreds of kilograms. And the other is in formulation work to get ready for animal dosing. So while we're waiting for the analysis of the scale up, how easy it's going to be, no one's doing anything with that. We're just waiting now. It's out at the contract lab in China, and they'll contact us when they have a batch they can send. The formulation aspect, again, we're working now on penetrating the skin. It'll be another 2 or 3 weeks before we get that data. So there are fits and starts. So there's a flurry of activity with everybody involved when a study begins. Then we sit back and wait. And then when the data comes in, we're crunching data and getting ready for the next thing on the Gantt chart to go out, and then we sit and wait.
I could give you a couple tools. There are a couple new ones. I actually just started to look at them today. Remote.co is a new one for remote jobs specifically, and then Upwork is a freelance website. So, I think you're going to find more luck with contractors, and freelancers for part-time And those are 2 sites, and then I think there's a couple of design ones.
Yeah,
that
depends what
I
you're
don't-
looking for.
Yeah.
There's ones
There's a
that are
fair
focused on
amount.
just designers.
Yeah, and focus on developers.
Upwork we've
Yeah.
used, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I have a question for David to start, and anybody else who wants to chime in. You mentioned that in some cases you have to train your customers to behave in a certain way, right? And several of you mentioned that your customers also are operating virtually. So do you have, conflict or clash, it's probably too strong a word, with customers where they're operating their system, you're operating your system, and you have to marry the two?
That happens at times, depends on there are, they may be using their own project management tool. So we found ways where, we can actually pull directly from their project tool and, automate some process where those tasks get created on our side. That's something, that's part of the initial project setup process. There's also, we go through, once we've determined how we're gonna manage that project, we go through a training with them. So if we're gonna use teamwork, let's say, for all of our tasks and messaging, we'll train each one of their team members as to how we want to use it and provide them with some documentation, and hopefully that gets them off on the right foot. It's certainly, as these things become more and more part of every, organization in the culture, it's been less of a roadblock in the last 2 or 3, 4 years than it used to be, 8, 9, 10 years ago, for sure. When everybody wanted to use email, that's, and, our phone rings once a day, maybe. It's very seldom.
Any other questions from the audience? Cam?
Yeah, thanks very much. To me, this is a very complicated area because there's a lot to choose from.
Yep.
Are there such things as consultants about tools? I mean, if I were to go in and look for tools.
Yeah, it sounds like this guy, yeah.
He's the consultant for tools, okay, well, that's good. And then is the learning curve, am I going to be able to learn it before, the Grim Reaper shows up? That's what I want to know. So the learning curve problem can be significant.
So the dirty little secret of our part of the industry, we help companies with tools for collaboration and to virtualize, whether it's their infrastructure or work with remote teams, is there's a 95% chance that your team is already using tools. Right? And the problem with that is they're probably using free versions or consumer versions, and you as the business have no control over that information and those assets and that intellectual property. And so when we walk into a company and we say, let's change the way your workflow is happening and how you're managing your files, we'll inevitably find people who are using Dropbox, the free version to share, salespeople to share proposals with their customers, right? So oftentimes it's more about learning what's already in use and moving them to the business version of that solution, or working with folks to pick something that gets them on the same page. We're more wrangling cats than we're trying to build something from scratch.
But there's hundreds, everything
Yeah.
you talk project management tools, there's
So many.
hundreds
Yeah.
and hundreds of them. It's really hard, to try to put together a list of, features that you're looking for, and there's plenty of review sites, or talk to people who have used some of these tools in the past, get some recommendations. I mean, you can start with super, super simple and then up to,
Right.
really complex. I mean, so it depends what you're looking for.
And the beautiful thing about the IT industry is, 3 years ago, if you wanted a project management tool, you were buying a piece of hardware, putting it in a computer room, installing the software, paying for annual maintenance, training your people. You needed a forklift to put it in. Today, you have a project management tool, you go in, you subscribe. Most are going to charge you month to month.
Right.
If the tool's not working, you export your data, you pick something else.
Right.
You get it set up and you give it a try. So the risk of picking something and realizing that it's wrong is significant, it's relatively non-existent compared to technology decisions only 2-3 years ago. And so, if people say, should we do A or B, if there's not a material difference, pick one, see how it works.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, if it doesn't integrate well, if it's not meeting your needs, we'll switch.
Yeah, even accountants are coming around, right? When I started in 9 years ago, I got QuickBooks Online, and my accountant thought that
I had two heads. He's like, you're not downloading, you're gonna pay every month for that? You're not gonna download it and put it on your laptop? I'm like, absolutely not. And 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, he started migrating all of his clients over to QuickBooks Online, right? QuickBooks Enterprise is gonna die. You know, and that's just the way it is, right? It makes it a lot easier. You know, I can get access to it wherever I want to, from whatever device I want to, and he can get in there, and anybody else I want to give access to.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that recruiting people, you are going to college campuses. Have you tried Craigslist and other sources for helping find the help?
So we don't use, we did one job posting on Craigslist. And the percentage of candidates who evidently even read the post was probably less than 1/10%. We actually, we pulled the ad down after 4 hours. We received about 950 submissions. This was for a 2-week project. We were looking for someone local. We were getting people in Singapore asking if we could get them an H-1B visa to work on this project. Like, it's like, so it's unfiltered. So we've used, we've used Indeed for a permanent full-time position. That seems to, work well and, at a fraction of the cost of some of the other job sites. But mostly we find that calling the Career Center, calling, for some of the stuff we do, a smart high school student is perfectly, we've hired high school students to backfill our support team who have more experience providing tech support because they do it as an internship within the high school than some of the people coming out of college have had actually working with customers. And so, we find that a call to the placement office or the guidance counselor office, they'll typically know someone who's good, who's looking for a job, or they'll spread the word or tack something up on the bulletin board or on their electronic bulletin board, and we'll get calls and we'll get people who are pre-screened.
Yeah, we just had a student from the Voc Tech High School here in Worcester for this spring semester, and they do a week full-time, and then a week at school, and then a week full-time, and a week at school, and it worked well. And they do that across, engineering, software, web development, tech support. They've got, it's pretty formal program. You got to go through a bunch of paperwork, but it worked pretty well.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for sharing so many useful tools. So regarding to the tool, have you used the SharePoint to manage your virtual projects?
No. No.
So
it's,
is there any advantage of because I know some companies use SharePoint to manage projects but not virtual. I'm curious because it's a cloud-based tool.
Yeah, I mean, I've never used SharePoint. I know I couldn't speak to it.
We've got customers that use SharePoint for projects. SharePoint is it's sort of a blank slate. So when you're using SharePoint, it provides the portal, but it doesn't necessarily provide the structure, right? So we've got clients who will create they have a template, and they'll create a SharePoint site for every one of their customers. And on that, they'll set up a group within the Office 365 environment. So there's a shared inbox, there's a shared calendar, and those will present, through the web interface of SharePoint. They'll set up file directories. But when it comes time to tracking tasks, they're gonna, maybe they use Planner or, they're gonna use Trello, they're gonna use a task and project management tool. And there are many that can present or be embedded within a SharePoint web page. And so the SharePoint provides the overall login security in the environment, but they're still gonna mix and match the tools based on the nature of the project work and the information they need to share and how they wanna share it.
My experience with SharePoint is it's a heck of a lot more development to get to the same place you can get to with the cloud-based ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're looking for project management, but if you want that portal that says
Project management, file sharing, calendaring, I mean.
it's a lot more. SharePoint today, particularly within the Office 365 environment, is much more wizard-driven and cut and paste. Google Sites sort of pushed Microsoft in that direction. So the old days we had a SharePoint server on site and you needed, a coding expert, is pretty far gone. The only time we'll pull in development resources for SharePoint is if they're looking for formal workflow management beyond the simple capabilities that are built in, where they need a rules engine for how information flows through a work process.
Great. Anybody else?
Okay, so random question. So a lot of you guys are into software development, and you got the issue of like bug tracking and keeping your client up to date, particularly with the open source software. So how does that work out? What do you share? What do you hide? A lot of these development tools, you can push data, but how much is too far?
It's all there on GitHub. You can go check it out right now if you want. They're all there. So, it's open source, so there's no hiding it. It is what it is. The code's all there, the issues are all there. Now we decide what gets prioritized. There's a lot of factors that go into that in terms of what those issues are. I mean, if it's a security bug, it gets fixed immediately. If it's something, further down the list and it's not bothering anybody at the moment, then, that's how it gets prioritized. So, but it's all there. It's all open.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So, if I can extend the answer on that. So beyond code and sharing, as you virtualize your infrastructure, permissions are key. Mm-hmm. We've got clients in the pharmaceutical industry who have FDA requirements for document management and information. That might keep you up at nights. It seems to keep many of our clients up.
Yeah.
And even a small business, the reality is, if you have one employee with health insurance, you actually have a HIPAA requirement that affects privacy of that employee's information, right? And so part of what we look to do, and the beautiful thing about where we are right now is there's technology. So ensuring with Google Docs, for example, we've got a tool that lets you, it comes with a default set of heuristics, but you can build your own business rules. So if I open a document in a folder within Google Drive that everyone in my company can see, this tool watches what I'm typing, and the minute it looks like there's something confidential. So if I type 341-44-, it's going to say that could be a social security number, and in real time it's going to strip the global view permission off that document and send me an alert to keep the information appropriate. So I know that I was potentially accidentally sharing information that shouldn't be shared globally within the company. It's interesting, we use this technology in the education world, because students, so many schools are using Google for education. Students have learned that they can communicate with each other not through email. And one of the heuristic sets we give schools, it's referred to as health and well-being. We actually, about a year ago, had an IT director who got an alert off of a well-being alert that was set up, and it was a student writing a suicide note. He contacted the police department, who sent an officer and an ambulance to the scene, and they interrupted a suicide attempt. That real time. And that same analysis we do in the school, we can do to keep the information private, right? To keep the trade secrets secret, to keep the financial information only with the folks within your company, outside your company you need to know on that need to know basis. So that resource and that help sort of to manage all this information that can become mountainous, it's there.
Great. Well, I'd like you, one more.
No, it's okay.
Question about human resources. So when you started your companies, they're all small companies. Did you do all of your filing requirements, payroll, and all of that stuff in-house? Did you move over to a service provider, PEO, or and what were probably the worst experiences?
The nice thing about a small company is that you don't need human resources in-house. Because as soon as you bring in human resources, it's all over. No one likes them. They're the most disliked people in any company. So but we use an external payroll for ourselves. And we don't have an employee handbook, which is wonderful. We don't have rules. We just, there's nothing against harassment in our company. Say what you want. It's the beauty of being under 15 people in the Commonwealth of Mass.
Yeah, we use an outsourced HR company. We do have an employee manual. And then we got a lot, we've got a lot, as we keep adding to the benefits. And the reason I did it was 4.5 years ago, I got a workers' comp audit, which took me about 11 hours of time trying to pull together all of the paperwork for that. And I had people in California. So I just said enough, and we found somebody to manage the payroll and the benefits, and it was a great decision. When they onboard everybody, if somebody is leaving and I need to fire somebody, they help with that process. Anybody has a question about payroll, they just email them and they answer it.
We use a PEO. We were using a payroll company, and I had a benefits consultant who was managing the benefits, but as a CEO of a small business, I was always caught in the middle, right? Someone comes in my office and it starts telling me about the procedure they need, and they're having trouble figuring out if it's covered. It's like, I don't want to know, first off. That's like too much information. But it's also time and it's energy, right? And you get into you do get into the confidentiality. So our PEO covers payroll, healthcare. There's some great advantages. We went from being a small group business with fewer than 20 people to being, my employees get their benefits. The federal tax ID number used for those benefits and their payroll, it's 280,000 employees. And so when we made that switch, suddenly we had eye care with reimbursement for eyeglasses and contact lenses up to a certain amount. So my employees got better benefits. It cost me less. There are all sorts of side benefits to it, but the best part is that there are no headaches. Being a virtual company and having people in remote locations made it very easy for me to hire someone in New York. Because guess what? I don't even have to worry about the labor postings. I mean, how do you do that? I've got one employee in New York who works in a co-working space. New York law, workers' comp, there's an 8.5 by 11 poster that has to be posted, right? They made sure it went to the guy's house and that he signed for it. So we've got proof that he's received it. And now if he chooses to hang it above his desk, that's fine. If it's in a file drawer somewhere, it doesn't matter. He knows where it is. And he can look up the information on it if he ever needs it. And then in our PO actually coordinated with our accounting to make sure all of our filings, all the taxes, the workers' comp, all that thing was set up properly and was running through the finances properly too. So another question.
One more here first.
Okay.
Can I add on to that really quick? If you're ever looking for a service provider, there's a new startup in Boston called Venture App, and it's pretty great. You could look up any service provider, and they'll give you recommendations, like for a web phone, they recommended Grasshopper. So pretty much for anything you need. So if you want an HR provider, they'll do an exhaustive search for you and recommend a couple different options. So,
What's the name again?
Venture App. It's great.
One here, one quick one here, and then we'll wrap it up.
First of all, thank you for all the information you have shared with us. I would like to know if in any point of time any of you have decided that this kind of service can't be outsourced anymore and should be in-house, and if yes, what were the circumstances? And the second question, if you could recommend a tool for managing a virtual team of outsourcers. Like, I could see the status of each body and talk to each body, but they can't see each other or talk to each other because they are not one organization. They are a virtual team of outsourcers.
So it would cost us hundreds of millions of dollars to build a structure where we did everything in-house. So that would never happen. To your second question, hiring someone so I don't need the other 3 people. There is such a thing in the pharmaceutical industry. I could have picked up the phone and called a company in San Diego called Therapeutics, Inc. and they would have done everything. They would have found the CROs, they would have managed the CROs. That would cost, but it takes away the personal feel of running your own company. But there are these, again, they're contract organizations that actually do everything for you. They'll meet with you, find out what the drug is, what the therapeutic indication is, and then they'll find the CROs and manage it and just send you the data.
I think it really is a case-by-case basis,
Yeah.
depending on what you're looking for, and what type of company, what size, what the work is. So I don't think I can answer if there's really an end point.
Yeah, you mentioned that you have employees all over US, in New York. Now, so what happens to the employee when he's working out of his home or his office there? He gets injured. Is it coming under New York workers' compensations? And what about the taxes and all the other stuff, unemployment and everything else?
So, for our employee in New York and for our employee in Georgia, part of what our PEO provides under the fixed fee is they provide workers' comp coverage in the state in which every employee works. So if either of them were hurt on the job, it's covered by the workers' comp plan that we have for that state as required under state law. Payroll, taxes, and payroll are done, and properly withheld. Because I've got an employee in New York, corporate-wise, I have to file corporate taxes in New York. Georgia requires an informational filing because we're considered a foreign corporation. But hey, we collect sales tax from schools in California. Strange rule, don't ask me why. In order to collect sales tax in California, you actually have to file income taxes now. So we've got other factors that cause us to file taxes in other states. But the PEO manages, from the human resource side, the PEO manages it all. And the added benefit, because everything, payroll, benefits, taxes, those insurance policies, all come out of the fee, which is deductible as a consulting fee. The employer, I get to deduct the employer payroll, the employer side of the payroll taxes, which you don't normally get to do. Because it's technically a consulting fee from the PEO. And so that helps offset the cost of the PEO itself.
Great. Well, please join me in a round of applause for our speakers, panelists tonight. Thank you very much all for coming out tonight. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Pleasure to see you all. Go out and enjoy the rest of the evening as the sun sets. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. So thanks.
Thank you.